Bobbie Gentry was a groundbreaking artist, a singer-songwriter who took the music world by storm with Ode to Billie Joe in 1967. She was one of the first female artists to write and produce her own music, blending Southern storytelling with haunting melodies. But at the height of her fame, she did something almost unheard of. She disappeared. No farewell tour, no final album, no explanation. What made Bobbie Gentry walk away from it all? And where is she now? Today, we unravel the mystery behind one of music's most enigmatic figures, Bobbie Gentry, born Roberta Lee Streeter on July 27, 1942, in Chickasaw County, Mississippi, entered the world in an environment far removed from the glamour of the music industry. She was born into rural poverty, where survival often took precedence over dreams of stardom. Life was simple yet harsh. Her family had no electricity or running water, and daily life revolved around farm work and the rhythms of the natural world. Her parents divorced when she was very young, and she spent much of her early childhood being raised by her grandparents on a small farm in Greenwood, Mississippi. This setting deeply influenced her artistry as she absorbed the rich storytelling traditions and musical culture of the South. The landscapes, the people, and the hardships of the Mississippi Delta would later become the foundation of her songwriting, giving her music an authenticity that resonated with listeners. Music entered Bobbie's life in an unusual way. Her grandmother, recognizing her budding interest in music, made a trade that would change Bobbie's life forever. She exchanged a milk cow for an old upright piano. This single act provided Bobbie with her first real instrument. With no access to formal training, she taught herself to play by ear, listening to the sounds around her and translating them into melodies. She experimented with different styles, blending what she heard in church, on the radio, and in her community. Gospel, blues, and country all seeped into her musical DNA. At just 7 years old, she performed publicly for the first time at a local school talent show, singing an original song she had written herself. This early experience sparked a love for performing that would shape her ambitions. However, despite her clear talent, the limitations of rural life meant that opportunities for a young girl with musical aspirations were scarce. At the age of 13, Bobbie moved to Palm Springs, California to live with her mother. The transition from the Deep South to the West Coast was a culture shock. Palm Springs, with its luxurious resorts and celebrity residents, was a stark contrast to the simple farm life she had known. But this move also opened new doors. In California, Bobbie began expanding her musical abilities, learning to play the guitar, banjo, and bass, developing a more refined sound. Her exposure to different genres grew as well. Influences like Mahalia Jackson, Hank Williams, and Muddy Waters shaped her artistic vision, blending bluesy storytelling with the raw emotion of country music. While music was her passion, Bobbie was also intellectually ambitious. She pursued formal education in music, attending the Los Angeles Conservatory of Music, where she studied music theory and composition. But supporting herself as a young musician wasn't easy. She worked various jobs, including as a secretary, to pay her bills while performing in Los Angeles nightclubs at night. These performances were more than just a way to make money. They were her training ground, a place where she honed her stage presence, tested her original material, and learned how to captivate an audience. It was during this period that she decided to reinvent herself. She chose the stage name Bobbie Gentry, inspired by the 1952 film Ruby Gentry starring Jennifer Jones. The movie told the story of a strong-willed Southern woman determined to rise above her circumstances, a character Bobbie deeply identified with. Adopting this name wasn't just about branding. It was about shaping her identity as an artist, bridging her Southern roots with the independent, self-made persona she wanted to project. By the mid-1960s, Bobbie Gentry had fully immersed herself in the music world. She was writing her own songs, creating a signature style that blended country, folk, and pop with poetic, cinematic storytelling. Her music wasn't just about melody, it was about narrative, about bringing listeners into her world. In 1967, Bobbie Gentry walked into the offices of Capitol Records with a demo tape that included an original song, Ode to Billie Joe. At the time, she was an unknown performer, just another aspiring singer-songwriter trying to break into the music industry. But what she had written was unlike anything else on the radio. A haunting, mysterious ballad that captured the stark realities of Southern life, while leaving listeners with more questions than answers. The moment Capitol heard it, they knew they had something special. Ode to Billie Joe was released as a single in July 1967, and it took the world by storm. The song tells the story of a Mississippi family sitting around the dinner table, casually discussing the apparent suicide of Billie Joe McAllister, who had jumped off the Tallahatchie Bridge. But beneath its simple storytelling, the song is filled with unanswered questions. Why did Billie Joe jump? What was thrown off the bridge? And why does the narrator, a young girl, seem to bear an unspoken grief that no one else in her family acknowledges? Bobbie never gave a definitive answer, instead choosing to leave the meaning open to interpretation. The song's minimalist arrangement, just Bobbie's husky, intimate vocals and a sparse acoustic guitar, only added to its eerie, melancholic tone. Capitol initially planned to use Ode to Billie Joe as the B-side to another track, but after hearing her voice and the raw emotional pull of the song, they decided to flip the record and make it the A-side. It was a decision that would launch Bobbie Gentry to instant fame. Within weeks of its release, Ode to Billie Joe shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, staying there for 4 weeks. It sold over 3 million copies, earning Bobbie multiple Grammy Awards, including Best New Artist and Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, an almost unheard of feat for a debut song written by its own performer. In a male-dominated industry, Bobbie Gentry had done something extraordinary. She had written, composed, and performed a song that not only topped the charts but also sparked national debate. Newspapers, critics, and fans alike became obsessed with deciphering the song's meaning. Some believed it was about an unplanned pregnancy, with Billie Joe taking his life after being forced to give up a baby. Others speculated it involved a secret affair or even a murder cover-up. Bobbie, however, refused to give a clear answer, saying only that the song was about unspoken grief and how people deal with tragedy in different ways. Beyond the mystery, what made Ode to Billie Joe so groundbreaking was how it brought a new kind of storytelling to popular music. Unlike the flashy, overproduced records of the time, Bobbie's song felt raw and cinematic. It was a Southern Gothic ballad, rich with atmosphere, evoking a world of hot, dusty afternoons, dinner table conversations, and quiet, overlooked tragedies. The song was so powerful that it even inspired a 1976 film adaptation, further cementing its place in American cultural history. With the success of Ode to Billie Joe, Capitol Records rushed to release Bobbie's debut album, which featured the hit single along with other original songs. The album was a massive success, spending weeks at number 1, and proving that Bobbie Gentry was not just a one-hit wonder. She was a serious artist with a unique voice in country, folk, and pop music. Over the next few years, Bobbie built on this momentum, releasing a series of critically acclaimed albums, including The Delta Suite and Local Gentry. She continued to write songs that explored themes of Southern identity, class struggles, and personal reflection, proving that her music was about more than just catchy melodies. It was about telling real stories. She also broke barriers for women in the industry. At a time when female artists were often seen as performers rather than creators, Bobbie was both. She controlled her music, wrote her own songs, and fought for artistic independence. Few artists of her era had the ability or the courage to do what she did. In 1968, she teamed up with Glen Campbell for a duet album, Bobbie Gentry and Glen Campbell, which featured the hit All I Have to Do Is Dream. The album was a commercial success, further solidifying her reputation. That same year, she became one of the few female artists to host her own television variety show, The Bobbie Gentry Show, which aired on CBS. Her stage presence, charisma, and sultry, smoky voice made her a captivating performer, and her star continued to rise. Beyond the U.S., Bobbie also found success internationally. In the UK, she became a household name, scoring a #1. One hit with I'll Never Fall in Love Again. She toured extensively across Europe and gained a following far beyond the American South, proving that her music had a universal appeal that transcended regional storytelling. Despite all this success, Bobbie Gentry never seemed entirely comfortable with fame. She once said in an interview, "I could have been a really big star, but I didn't want to be. I love music, but not the fame." This statement would become even more significant in the years to come, as she made a decision that would leave fans and the music industry in shock. She would walk away from it all. With Ode to Billie Joe establishing Bobbie Gentry as one of the most captivating new voices in music, she wasted no time proving that she was far more than a one-hit wonder. Rather than riding on the success of her debut, she used it as a foundation to build an even more ambitious and boundary-pushing career. In a music industry dominated by male songwriters and producers, Bobbie was a rarity, a woman who not only performed but also wrote, arranged, and controlled her own music. Following her chart-topping debut, she released the Delta Sweetie in 1968, an album that showcased her Southern storytelling roots in a deeply personal and experimental way. Unlike the stripped-down sound of Ode to Billie Joe, the Delta Suite was lush and cinematic, filled with orchestral arrangements and complex compositions. It was a concept album of sorts, painting vivid portraits of small-town Southern life, mixing original songs with reinterpretations of gospel and blues classics. While it didn't achieve the same commercial success as her debut, it was critically acclaimed and has since been recognized as one of her most artistically daring works. That same year, she released Local Gentry, another album that emphasized her versatility as both a songwriter and performer. It included songs that delved into themes of fame, loneliness, and identity, showing a more introspective side of her artistry. While these albums didn't generate massive radio hits, they solidified her reputation as one of the most innovative female artists of her time, someone who wasn't afraid to experiment with genre, sound, and storytelling. During this period, Bobbie also became a fashion and cultural icon. With her striking beauty, signature thick eyeliner, voluminous hair, and effortlessly glamorous style, she was unlike most country or folk singers of the time. She embodied the best of Hollywood sophistication and Southern charm, which made her a perfect fit for television. In 1968, she teamed up with Glen Campbell, one of the biggest country pop stars of the era, for the duet album Bobbie Gentry and Glen Campbell. The two had a natural chemistry, and their voices blended seamlessly, creating timeless renditions of songs like All I Have to Do Is Dream. The album was a commercial success and deepened her connection to mainstream country music audiences, showing that she could thrive in both pop and country markets. Perhaps the biggest leap in her career came when she transitioned to television, an unusual move for a singer-songwriter at the time. In the late 1960s, variety shows were hugely popular, and the Bobbie Gentry show premiered on CBS in 1968, making her one of the first female artists to headline her own national TV program. The show blended music, comedy, and elaborate stage performances, further highlighting Bobbie's charisma and star power. She wasn't just a singer, she was a performer in every sense, captivating audiences not just with her music, but with her presence. Hosting her own show gave her a level of creative control that few female artists had at the time. It also showcased her sharp business instincts. Bobbie was always involved in the behind-the-scenes aspects of her career, from set design to production decisions. Her ambition and artistry made her one of the most dynamic entertainers of the late 60s and early 70s, helping pave the way for future female artists who wanted to break free from industry constraints and take control of their own image and sound. While Bobbie's popularity soared in the US, she also became a sensation in the UK, where she scored a #1 hit with "I'll Never Fall in Love Again." She frequently performed overseas and developed a dedicated international following, proving that her music had universal appeal beyond her southern roots. At the height of her success, Bobbie had done something truly remarkable. She had successfully navigated between pop, country, folk, and television, breaking barriers in multiple entertainment industries. She had full creative control over her music, was recognized as both a lyricist and a performer, and had become one of the highest paid female entertainers in the world. Yet despite her undeniable talent and growing success, Bobbie remained an enigma. Unlike many of her contemporaries, she never seemed fully comfortable with celebrity culture. As her career progressed, her reluctance to engage with the machinery of fame became more evident. She had built something extraordinary, but as the years went on, she would begin to step back from the spotlight, eventually making a decision that would leave the entire music world stunned. At the height of her success, Bobbie Gentry had become one of the most influential and intriguing figures in American music. She was not only a chart-topping singer-songwriter, but also a television personality, a cultural icon, and one of the highest-paid female entertainers of her time. Despite her widespread fame, there was always a sense of mystery surrounding her. Unlike many artists who thrived in the spotlight, Bobbie seemed to crave control over her artistry while resisting the constant scrutiny that came with fame. This desire for privacy extended into her personal life, where her relationships and marriages became subjects of speculation, as they were brief, enigmatic, and largely undocumented. Bobbie Gentry was married 3 times, yet each of these unions ended as quickly and mysteriously as they had begun. Her first marriage was perhaps the most surprising, a whirlwind romance with Bill Harrah, the multimillionaire casino mogul and founder of Harrah's Hotels and Casinos. The marriage, which took place in 1969, shocked fans and the press alike. Harrah was a well-known businessman, a man deeply entrenched in the world of high-stakes gambling, lavish resorts, and extreme wealth. Most notably, he was more than 30 years older than Bobbie, leading many to question what had drawn them together. At first glance, Bobbie and Harrah seemed like an odd match. She was an independent, creative artist, known for her songwriting and down-to-earth personality, while he was a powerful businessman, accustomed to control and structure. Some speculated that Harrah, a man used to commanding everything around him, may have expected Bobbie to play the role of a traditional glamorous wife, something that clashed with her fiercely independent nature. Whatever the reason, the marriage lasted only 5 months before ending in divorce. Bobbie never publicly addressed the reasons for their split, and Harrah remained equally silent. A few years later, Bobbie entered what seemed to be a more natural and promising relationship, her second marriage to Jim Stafford, a fellow singer-songwriter known for his humorous country hits like Spiders and Snakes. Unlike her marriage to Hera, this seemed like a partnership built on shared creativity and mutual understanding. Bobbie and Jim had a son, Tyler Stafford, born in 1978, and for a brief period, it appeared as though Bobbie had found a more stable personal life. However, even with their shared background in music, their marriage was short-lived. Within a year, they had quietly divorced, once again with no clear public explanation. What made this situation even more intriguing was Bobbie's complete disappearance from public discussions about her son. She ensured that no media coverage or interviews would expose him to the spotlight, fiercely guarding his privacy in a way that was almost unheard of for a celebrity of her stature. To this day, very little is known about Tyler, and Bobbie never spoke about her experiences as a mother in interviews. Her third and final marriage was to Thomas R. Touton, a businessman she wed in 1981. Like her previous marriages, this one ended swiftly and quietly. They divorced within a year, and after that, Bobbie never remarried. What stood out was that after this third divorce, she withdrew almost entirely from the public eye, never making another attempt at a high-profile relationship. Bobbie's approach to relationships was unusual for someone of her fame. In an industry where celebrity marriages often become spectacles, generating headlines and media attention, Bobbie did the opposite. She actively avoided publicity when it came to her private life. She never spoke about her marriages in depth, rarely addressed rumors, and after her final divorce, she seemed to completely remove herself from conversations about romance and relationships. Her deep aversion to public scrutiny made her personal life even more fascinating to those who followed her career. Unlike many stars of her era, who leaned into their celebrity status and built public personas around their relationships, Bobbie seemed to want nothing to do with the attention that came with fame. Some believe that her failed marriages were a reflection of this internal conflict, her desire for artistic and personal freedom clashing with the expectations placed upon her as a public figure. This struggle wasn't unique to her romantic relationships. It was a pattern that extended into every aspect of her life. Bobbie Gentry had the talent, the presence, and the artistic vision to become a long-lasting legend, but it became increasingly clear that she never wanted to be trapped by celebrity culture. She had built a career on her own terms, but as time went on, it seemed as though even that wasn't enough. She didn't just want control over her music, she wanted control over her entire narrative. By the early 1980s, Bobbie Gentry had already accomplished what many artists could only dream of. She had built an extraordinary career, writing and performing her own music, breaking barriers as a female artist in a male-dominated industry, and even becoming a television star. She had navigated the peaks and valleys of fame, experienced both creative success and personal setbacks, and had amassed a fortune that allowed her complete financial freedom. Then she did something almost unheard of. She disappeared. In 1981, after a string of highly successful years, Bobbie Gentry walked away from the entertainment industry without a formal announcement, farewell tour, or explanation. One day she was a major star, the next she was gone. There were no farewell performances, no official retirement statement, just a gradual vanishing. She stopped making music, withdrew from public appearances, and never looked back. This abrupt disappearance left fans and the music industry stunned and full of questions. Why would someone at the peak of their career choose to vanish so completely? What had driven her to walk away from everything she had built? Over the years, several theories have emerged to explain Bobbie's shocking exit. One of the most popular explanations is burnout. Gentry had spent more than a decade in the spotlight, constantly working, touring, recording, producing television shows, and handling the pressures of being one of the most recognizable female artists of her era. By the time she released her final studio album, Patchwork, in 1971, she had already started stepping back from the recording industry. While she continued to make television appearances and live performances throughout the 70s, she never released another album. Some believe that the relentless demands of the music business had taken their toll on her, and she simply had no desire to keep playing the industry's game. Another theory is that motherhood changed her priorities. After her second marriage to Jim Stafford and the birth of their son, Tyler Stafford, in 1978, Bobbie became extremely private about her personal life. She never discussed her son publicly and took great care to keep him out of the media. Some believe that her decision to leave the industry was fueled by a desire to give her son a normal life, away from the pressures of fame and public scrutiny. Given her fierce protection of her personal life, it wouldn't be surprising if she chose to step away entirely for the sake of her child. Others suggest that Gentry had grown disillusioned with the entertainment industry. While she was celebrated for her artistic talent, she had also witnessed firsthand the darker sides of the music business, the exploitation, the creative restrictions, and the relentless commercial pressures. Bobbie had always been an artist in control of her work, but in an industry that often sought to mold women into marketable images, she may have found herself increasingly at odds with the expectations placed upon her. Some speculate that she simply no longer wanted to be part of an industry that didn't align with her values. Perhaps the most practical explanation for her disappearance is that she didn't need to work anymore. Unlike many artists who are forced to continue performing well into their later years due to financial struggles, Bobbie Gentry had been incredibly savvy with her business dealings. She retained full ownership of her publishing rights, meaning that even after she stopped performing, she continued to earn royalties from her music. Ode to Billie Joe alone generated millions of dollars in revenue, and with a string of hit songs and successful albums under her name, she was financially secure for life. Unlike many of her contemporaries who relied on touring to maintain their income, Bobbie was in a rare position. She could afford to disappear. Despite numerous attempts over the years to track her down, Bobbie Gentry has remained one of the most elusive figures in music history. In 2016, a report suggested that she was living in a gated community near Memphis, Tennessee, but even that remains unconfirmed. She has declined all interview requests, turned down offers for comeback tours, and ignored the music industry's efforts to celebrate her legacy. She remains completely silent, leaving fans and historians to piece together her story without her input. For more than 4 decades, Bobbie Gentry has lived in complete seclusion, leaving behind a career that once made her one of the most recognizable voices in American music. Unlike many artists who attempt to hold on to fame or stage comebacks after years of retirement, Gentry has done the opposite. She has erased herself from the public eye so thoroughly that even those who worked closely with her have been unable to track her down. Though her exact whereabouts remain unconfirmed, reports suggest that she now resides in a gated community near Memphis, Tennessee, just a few hours from the Tallahatchie Bridge, the setting of her most famous song. A 2016 Washington Post report described her home as a luxurious estate worth over $1 million, tucked away from prying eyes. Some locals claim to have seen her, yet no verifiable public photos or interviews have surfaced since she left the industry. She does not attend public events, does not grant interviews, and has never spoken about her decision to walk away. Over the years, numerous attempts have been made to bring Bobbie Gentry back into the public sphere, but she has resolutely declined them all. She has turned down interview requests, ignored invitations for tribute concerts, and refused lucrative offers to return to the stage. Even major industry celebrations of her work, including the 2018 release of The Girl from Chickasaw County, the Complete Capital Masters, which reignited widespread interest in her music, were met with complete silence on her part. While many artists in her position might have been tempted to return, even briefly, Gentry has remained unwavering in her choice to stay out of the limelight. Yet despite her self-imposed exile, Bobbie Gentry's impact remains undeniable. Her influence can be heard in the work of a new generation of singer-songwriters, including Lana Del Rey, Casey Musgraves, and Taylor Swift, all of whom share her talent for crafting melancholic, narrative-driven songs. Her ability to seamlessly blend country, pop, folk, and blues into a distinctive sound was ahead of its time, and music historians now recognize her as a pioneer, a woman who not only wrote and performed her own songs, but also retained creative control in an era when female artists were often expected to simply follow the lead of male producers and executives. Her decision to leave the industry remains one of the most intriguing and debated exits in music history. Was she simply tired of fame? Did she want to raise her son in privacy? Had she grown disillusioned with the business side of the industry? Or was she making a statement, a deliberate rejection of a world that no longer interested her? Whatever the reason, her absence has only amplified her legend. Instead of fading away, she has become a symbol of artistic autonomy, someone who chose to leave on her own terms, rather than be shaped or controlled by external pressures. While the world may never hear from Bobbie Gentry again, her mystique continues to grow. Decades after she last performed, fans remain fascinated by her life, her work, and her decision to disappear so completely. In an industry where stars often struggle to maintain relevance, Gentry did something almost unheard of. She vanished at the height of her career and never looked back. And in doing so, she ensured that she would never be forgotten.